So as part of its sort of program for a post-genocide society, trying to create a society in which presumably this will never happen again, they have pointed out the flaws, the mistakes in the old understanding and proposes the far better understanding that they now have, which has a number of advantages. It argues in a way that there is no distinction between Hutu and Tutsi, right? They're all Rwandans, have always been. At best, the term meant something like maybe an income class, but nothing more, right? And hence, aren't we all Rwandans? And wouldn't that be the best way to understand ourselves so as not to have a future genocide? If indeed a new generation of children gets born who don't buy into this old story anymore, but buy into a story of being all Rwandans, presumably we will have done something great against genocide. Now there's a big limitation to this as well. First of all, it's actually false too. The old image was false, the new image is equally false. They're both politically inspired simplifications of history. They're invented histories, both of them. Now you could argue, who cares? You know, it's not factual truth that is so important, it is whether it actually works, whether it creates a peaceful society at ease with itself and capable of prosperity and growth. So, you know, I'm fine with that. Nonetheless, a big problem does remain that it doesn't match the reality that people have known, and it's not that easy to suddenly make people believe it. Now, the government is a very authoritarian government in this respect. There is no way to not formally adhere to this version of history. In public, in schools, in speeches, in any conversation even, because you're always worried if somebody will tell on you, rattle on you, because it is an authoritarian state, a very authoritarian state even. So you will hear people now systematically reflect the second story. But in so doing, the question remains, do they really believe it? Or are they only pretending? And if they're really pretending, what are the stories they tell each other in secret at night when nobody is around? And are those stories any different from the past stories or not? And I do not know the answer to that because it's really, really very hard to figure it out. So it has certainly, the new story or the new interpretation has pushed the old one underground, for sure. But has it made the old one disappear? That we don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe over time actually it will, maybe not. As far as I know, last time I knew, but this is a few years ago, Rwanda still does not teach history at all at school, precisely because it's so hard to actually come up with a version that is acceptable to them. Now, Rwanda is a pretty vertical society, so it is not like the US where a sort of sense of we're all equal is pervasive, even though we might not in reality be all equal, we all like to behave that way. Even professors and students, we are unequal in that professors grade students and so on, but we do not insist as professors, most of us at least, on our sort of, well, we are above you and you shall treat us with extreme deference and not bother us, and so on. Rwanda, like many other societies, is far more at the other extreme of this. So power manifests itself the whole time in all types of social relations. And the hierarchy of class and power is very important. The reason I explain this is that it's very hard for anybody to take any initiative under those conditions, especially on something as sensitive as this in a classroom, for example. Right? So you can imagine everybody has these questions, but the teacher is entirely constrained by what his or her superiors are giving him and allowing him or her to say as the story. And currently, by the way, there is no story, which means this teacher basically is scared stiff of going there because he or she is subject to a lot of power from above. The students simultaneously are in a relation of extreme inequality to their teachers. These are not societies where you just lift your hand and ask a question, crack a joke, and try to challenge your teacher and see if he or she knows the answer. These are societies where you write down exactly what they told you, and by the end of the semester you try to exactly copy it. But the teacher is scared to go there, the student is too. So essentially, you get indeed this gaping elephant in the room, which everybody knows about and nobody dares to talk about. So the only way that people dare is by mimicking the official rhetoric, because it's the only safe thing to do. But all the other things that do happen, and the pain that exists and so on, and the images that may exist, and the questions people may have, are largely not askable or answerable as it currently stands in any space that is remotely public, including classrooms, for example. And by the way, that's not the fault of the government. This is just both the nature of the society and then the depth and the gravity of the shock to which it was subjected in the genocide.